G'day mates, it's B-Buster here, and I would like to give Ana Luisa a huge shout out for sponsoring this episode. So, are you looking for the perfect gift for yourself or for someone special? Then Ana Luisa has you covered. Ana Luisa provides beautiful, sustainable jewelry that not only looks terrific, but also comes with a great price tag. And for my listeners, I managed to pick up an even better current deal with a discount of 20% off. Their jewelry starts at the affordable price of just $39 with no luxury markup, and I can attest to the quality. I decided to get my missus a little something for her birthday this year, the willow necklace, and man, was it the perfect gift. It's super lightweight, has a beautiful intricate design, and looks great with formal and casual wear. And most importantly, she loves it. The cool thing about Ana Luisa too is that the company also offsets 100% of their carbon emissions, starting with the very sourcing of their raw materials all the way to the disposal. Their shipping is excellent and comes with custom taxes included for international customers, and with a 20% discount to boot, you can't go wrong. You can also check them out by following their Instagram or by subscribing to their newsletters, in which they always offer perks for engaged customers. I absolutely recommend checking them out. All you have to do is head to shop.analuisa.com/scared. I really love them. Their prices start at $39. They have new jewelry collections released every Friday, and they're currently running the biggest sale of the year, so be sure to check them out soon. Again, that's 20% off at shop.analuisa.com/scared. You can also find a link in the description within tonight's episode. shop.analuisa.com/scared. In my younger days, just after high school, I was what you would probably consider a vagrant. No home to speak of, but not quite homeless either, I guess. Growing up poor in a poor dying factory town assures, well, few things. But most of the kids in my town knew and understood clearly that the only way to escape such a bleak place was to, well, leave, find work somewhere else, and don't come back unless you want to be trapped forever. And I was no exception to this understanding. It was the result of this desperate retreat from certain poverty that led me to work as a labourer in the pipeline industry. Grueling work, but decent pay. A fair start for one such as myself. After about 3 months of working, my foreman, who we'll call Jay, discovered that I was staying at a motel and wouldn't have it. He was kind enough to invite me to stay with his family until I found an apartment, and I was grateful for his offer. Jay and his family were honest rural people who lived in an honest rural area as well. A house with a barn in the field surrounded by the wooded hills, no neighbours, and one road in and out. Very similar to houses I had seen and been around growing up, to be honest. It was a great area and great company too, and I was thankful for such a turn in my luck. The first evening I stayed there, Jay's wife got me situated in my room, and I became acquainted with everyone in the house over dinner. After our meal, I stepped out for a cigarette and decided the tree line behind their barn would be the best area to smoke privately and inoffensively. The sun had set and then some by the time that I stepped out of the house. The moon was high and full, keeping the valley that I was in dully illuminated and casting the surrounding hills as dark shadows against the star-filled sky. It was a night that I think most would find peaceful. But as soon as my boots met the grass, that primal instinctive warning that a man gets sometimes began to slowly creep into my core. That alarm that tells you that something just ain't right here. Being young and dumb and brave, of course, I shrugged it off though, and continued to the tree line, attempting to keep the growing feeling at bay. When I at last approached the shadowed tangle of trees and underbrush on the outskirts of their yard, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my pack of Marlboros and my matches, and struck out a light. As I brought the match to my cigarette, though, that was when I saw it. Mere feet away from where I was standing, just barely within the trees, was the stark and outstanding silhouette of something huge. It stood crouched and still had to be at least 7 feet tall, large pointed ears and narrowly elongated snout. Its eyes glimmered that weird sort of infrared color you see when animals reflect light in their eyes at night. My initial panic-stricken thoughts were, that is a wolf. It was in the midst of this processing that I realized too that there was no way that this actually was a wolf, because wolves, they don't stand upright, and this creature was unmistakably on 2 legs. It was slouched low, one arm hung down past its haunches, and the other was pressed firmly against a tree to the right of it. Broad shoulders and a savage posture. It didn't move. It didn't seem startled or threatened or even afraid, but simply aware. It knew that I saw it, and it knew that I knew. I wish I could say that I did something, anything. I wish I could say that I ran or that I screamed or even moved, but I was just completely frozen in fear, standing rigid as a statue with nothing but a quickly dying matchlight between me and whatever monstrous thing was in front of me. We seemed to lock eyes for what felt like hours, but was really probably only moments, and as though the creature had decided it was done terrifying me, it straightened up, backed away slowly into the darkness of the trees. No sound, not a broken twig or even a rustled leaf was heard. As soon as my legs allowed me, I ran like heck back to the safety of Jay's house, slammed the door behind me, and was met with a look of concern from my foreman and his wife, who were watching TV in the living room. I immediately said, "Guys, there's something out there." It was the only thing that I could gasp. Jay exchanged a glance with his wife and looked back towards me. "Listen, boy, if you're going to stay here, you need to understand that there's things out in them woods that you best not pay attention to, alright?" He said it so nonchalantly, like he was talking about last night's football game. You hear a strange noise, you ignore it. You see a strange shadow, just ignore it. And if you get a strange feeling, just come inside and forget you felt it. But there are things out there we just don't understand, but we respect it, because it's their land. We just live here. It's been 15 years since my encounter with that creature in the woods, and I still think about it often. And though I stayed with Jay and his family for another 3 weeks after that night, I never felt easy on that property. That feeling never left, that warning stayed alert, and I will never go out to those woods at night unless I have absolutely no other choice. Once you know what's out there, you never see things the same again. And I know that this might seem far-fetched. I know that many won't believe what I'm saying, but this is a story that I had to share. So back in 2017, my girlfriend and I were in a sort of semi-long distance relationship. I lived in the Orlando area and she in Tampa. I would frequently travel via megabus to Tampa to see her and for concerts and stuff. But shortly after this experience, I switched exclusively to Amtrak and didn't regret having to pay 1 cent more. On this day, however, I had picked up Wendy's before the trip for dinner and had made my way to the boarding area. I noticed a sort of disheveled older man glaring at me openly. I didn't acknowledge him and instead boarded the bus. I sat near the back of the bus, placed my lone backpack on the seat next to me, and opened my food. As I was eating, I noticed that this same man who had been glaring had boarded and sat across the aisle from me, in the seat closest to the aisle, same as me. We had about, I would guess, 2 feet of separation at this point. And well, the bus takes off and we're soon on the interstate, headed west. Every time I look a bit at my food, he would sort of grumble though. Then he started raising his voice a bit and motioning to me. Then he started near shouting and pointing at my wrapper. I had headphones in and was comfortably ignoring him by this point. I'd worked a full shift at work that day, had headed home, showered, changed, grabbed my packed bag and headed out. So I was really tired and sort of hungry. But as I finished my food, balled up the wrappers and tossed them back into the bag, he just became nothing short of irate, shrieking in Spanish, I think, and reached over to me, grabbing the bag and looking inside. When he saw that it was empty, he began screaming at me, and I bluntly told him to shut up. It was my food. At that, he went silent for a bit, until I saw him rummaging in his bag. He then slipped a hatchet out of his bag, laid it across his lap, and smirked at me. My blood ran cold. I'm a big guy, 6'3", 300, but in that small space and dealing with a weapon-wielding maniac, I knew that there was not much that I could do. I immediately stood up, walked to the driver, and told him what had happened. The next stop was Lakeland, and we were still about 45 minutes away, which was the only way that he could do something. I went back to my seat, grabbed my backpack, and fled to the upper level, sitting close to the window at the far back. Eventually, when we got to Lakeland, I saw him get approached and escorted off the bus. As he stepped off, he stumbled and fell, which is when I realized that he was also completely drunk or on something. I'm really glad that he didn't get the opportunity to hurt anyone on that bus, and I can only hope that he was detained after or separated from his weapon. But for as long as I live, I will never forget that smirk. So last night, I was watching a video, and it brought up a memory that my brain must have blocked out for years, and now I'm sort of haunted by it again. You see, I was 13 years old, hanging out with my best friend. We lived in a small town in Wisconsin, and it was the 90s, so there wasn't much to do. No smartphones at that time. So we would always walk around town and play in the woods. On this day, we decided to walk to the railroad tracks. We chat about boys and have a bunch of giggles while getting to the wooded area of the tracks that go on until the next town, like miles away. And it must have been about maybe halfway into our journey, I hear a baby crying. I look at my friend as we continue our stride, thinking that she would have had some sort of facial expression acknowledging it, but no. I kept on walking for another minute, just silently asking myself why there's a baby crying. Finally, I just sort of stop and look at my friend and say, "Why is there a baby crying? We're out in the woods. Where's it coming from?" My friend looks at me with a confused face, and to my dismay, she says, "What are you talking about? I didn't hear anything." She laughs at me, and we continue our stride. Mind you, I still hear this constant wailing of a baby. As we're walking, I have like 10 billion questions going on in my head, and become increasingly agitated as this crying wouldn't stop until it became a sheer, almost painful, loud screaming. And it was at that point again where I stopped dead in my tracks, pulled my friend's arm, and I just burst into tears. "You have to hear that. Where is it? Where is its mum? It sounds like it could be hurt." My friend treated me like I was a lunatic and continued to make a point that she hasn't heard anything. While we're arguing, the crying stops. A sigh of relief, I sort of shift my head down in disbelief of it all. Looking at my feet, I then noticed that I was standing on something in the gravel of the middle of the tracks. I said, "What's that?" Pulled on the scrap that was visible to reveal something that gave me instant chills down my spine. It was a baby's onesie, tattered up and sort of ruined. I immediately felt sick to my stomach. My friend's eyes got wide, and I said, "Let's get out of here." And we never went back. I don't know what I experienced that day or why it's been blocked from my memory for like 15 years, but it truly terrified me. Let me know what your opinion is about all of this, as I'm still at a loss to this day.